Listen, I love turn-based RPGs. I promise, I am an RPG guy. My top 5 favorite games of all time are RPGs. So it pains me when I say this, but Dragon Quest XI bores me to tears. Hey, that's almost the title of the video. Even though this was one of the first RPGs, and every Dragon Quest release is a national holiday in Japan, I just don't get the appeal with this entry. For a number of reasons I'll go over in this video, Dragon Quest XI is sleep-inducing. Seriously. Honk, shoo, snooze on that thing. Before I get to that, I want to give you all a spoiler warning for my commentary and footage, so now's your chance to back out if you don't want spoilers. Now that I have that out of the way, now for my first area of critique, let's start with the story of Dragon Quest XI.
It's so boring!
How does that work? Where does that exactly come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop!
Your RPG can't function without a great story. The entire genre was built off the back of D&D, which relies on a good DM to function well as a good social storytelling, role-playing experience. So, that leads us to, what roles do we have on offer to play? We got abysmal dog shit. Yeah, okay. Here is the Luminary, the chosen one to save the world. The plot centers around him being deemed a demon by the king. So, he needs to adventure throughout the kingdom and collect the 6 orbs to unlock the World Tree Yggdrasil, and then defeat the Dark One. This game was released far before ChatGPT, and I'm still convinced it wrote the story. However, a generic premise can still allow for a great story. These tropes have been proven to work for over 1,000 years, for good reason. So, let's address each part of this premise and address the paint-by-numbers way each part of the story was executed. Let's start with the most generic part of the premise, the 6 orbs you need to collect. An example of this sort of several MacGuffins plot being used in a really good RPG is Paper Mario The 1,000-Year Door, where it is used to set up 7 comedic adventures that are tributes to certain genres of stories. All of them are super different and funny with distinct and interesting themes to set them apart. Dragon Quest XI, on the other hand, doesn't have anything like that. None of the stories are that interesting. I'd bring up an example here, but since I have nothing to bring up as a point of interest, that just proves my point. The stakes feel unimportant and low, and I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. All of it felt so empty. Like, why collect the 6 orbs? Why save the world? It doesn't look like it needs saving, and I'm not invested in this said world, so why are we even doing this? The feeling of unimportance and obligation makes the main plot feel inferior to the subplot of the kingdom that believes you to be a hellspawn. I'll give the game its credit where it's due. This is a great plot point. After coming of age as a hero and going to confront the king with your powers, hoping to be accepted by him, you are detained and put into a dungeon. It's a good start and a great way to hook the player into the story. And throughout your journey, you keep getting antagonized by them. They feel like real menacing villains that you can barely fight with how strong they are. I still have a major gripe with this. It's that you don't get to fight King Cornelian, the guy that first accuses you and gets you thrown into the dungeon. It would have been so cool to show up at the castle again and stronger to put the king in his place and see him grovel on his knees before you. But you don't get to do that because he gets redeemed and you forgive him. For you see, Dragon Quest XI is about learning to understand and forgive people for their past ideologies and actions. But in the immortal words of Gideon Greaves,
are we done with the hugging and learning? I thought we had a fight going on here!
in contradiction to who I just quoted, putting a manhunt on someone and labeling them as the literal actual devil is not something to turn the other cheek and act like the better man about. However, in the absence of a King Cornelian fight, Jasper makes for a good villain. He's petty and snarky and keeps the royal antagonist plotline relevant until... the subplot and main plot are upstaged by the real main villain, the Dark One. Woo! He has no character traits to speak of, he's just an evil dude in a coat. His real name is Mordegard. Also, he has a goatee. Sorry, but I simply refuse to be intimidated in any way by a dude with a fucking goatee. Nothing to say about this nothing burger. No personality and no story to speak of. He just has his big hood, casts spells, and has a mildly cool dragon form with a decent enough fight. He's sauceless, has zero aura, has no drip, stacks no paper, gets no bitches. And low-key, you could say the same thing about the absolute geek squad we got as a party. Eric was okay, I guess. Serena was just there. Jade exists, I guess. Gotta get the gooners in somehow. And lastly, Rab. By far the worst member of the party, both in story and combat. In story, he just is mainly there to vomit plot at you. In combat, he's a jack of all trades, master of none. He excels at nothing really, so you can just bench him. In the end, Veronica and Sylvando were cool, I guess. They were the only ones to wake me up from the half slumber I was in through their energetic personalities and being super useful in combat. But in the end, you receive a pretty cool conclusion to the royal villain plotline with Hendrik. He originally sides with the bad guys, but with the shared enemy of the Dark One, you grow to understand and fight along with each other, fitting with the theme of the game, in a good way. He's also a super great party member that absorbs damage for your team. With the combat finally mentioned, let's talk about it.
It's so boring.
How does that work? Where does that exactly come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop.
It sure is turn-based JRPG combat. I think it's okay. Each character was good to use and the skill tree was okay, I guess. My primary complaint isn't with the allies, it's with the enemies. I love the designs, don't get me wrong, but man, do they all blend together gameplay-wise. Not that many special abilities or variety. How is fighting a Platypunk different from fighting a Cruelcumber outside of their stats? Giving the opponents their own special abilities would have helped a lot, but instead we get some aesthetically amazing enemies that don't feel that different in gameplay. Similar thing with the bosses, they all feel like just big damage sponges without a good enough gimmick to hold them together. For example, Booga, he's the owner of a special hell casino and is a dancing demon king. So, instead of getting a really cool fight themed around what I described, you just get a, well, generic damage sponge with some AoE damage and some status ailments, I guess. This frustrates me to my core, as RPG bosses have no excuse to be boring or forgettable. To explain what I mean, RPG bosses don't have to account for things such as boss arena, size, and making it easy to understand where to hit it. In most turn-based RPGs, the boss just needs to be a really cool PNG or models, since you don't have to account for things like that. Also, the RPG genre allows you to give a boss a lot of variety in its specific stats and abilities, with the lack of a restriction on design and being able to go bonkers with the abilities. You can make a living pile of garbage that throws a bunch of trash at you, a flaming stereotype that hits you with giant golden mail symbols, and Gygus. Just look at the screen. There is one more gameplay flaw when it comes to Dragon Quest XI, and I believe it deserves its own section for how vexatious it is to deal with. Let us talk about the grinding in Dragon Quest XI.
It's so boring.
How does that work? Where does that expression come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop.
RPGs have a really strong reputation for needing to grind a lot, spending hours fighting menial opponents to get an appropriate level for the enemies ahead, getting your progress halted to fight the same weak enemies for hours on end can be frustrating and has outright turned people away from the entire genre because of it. So, in any RPG that I have ever played, Dragon Quest XI has the most egregious grinding problem. Even if you fight a fair number of enemies, you will get out-leveled by the bosses. This doesn't happen just one time, but this is nearly every boss, mainly after the squid boss. Just out of nowhere, you have to go back and sit with the wave of L's you took as you keep fighting the same slimes over and over again. The thing is that the enemies give out pitiful XP in comparison to what you need to level up. Grinding is a way to artificially inflate difficulty and really doesn't need to be there to create an interesting gameplay experience. There are so many ways to make RPGs difficult without needing to grind. The enemies having a complex moveset that becomes a puzzle to untangle, having to manage your resources in the face of a brutal enemy, or an almost unbeatable super move or gimmick you have to work around. For example, Shin Megami Tensei 3 and Fire Emblem Three Houses Classic Mode were military grade steel tough, but I only needed to grind like a couple times or so, if that. On the other, far much uglier and calloused hand, once you get to the appropriate level, spam your strongest attack over again, heal when necessary, I guess. So, not that difficult when at the correct level, an absolute gameplay anticlimax. This is more irrefutable proof that forced grinding is a failure in game design. Point blank, period. So with the grinding covered, let's talk about the music of this game.
It's so boring.
How does that work? Where does that expression come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop.
This is the most subjective part of the video, as music taste is, of course, subjective for the most part. But this is my video, and I don't always have to be objective, so shut up. Dragon Quest XI's OST is quite dull. Instead of using a full orchestra, it's in MIDI, unlike the rest of the games, from what I heard. Each song sounds okay, but when they are played over and over and over and over and over again, they become outright annoying. Stuff like this is why music is so prized in RPGs, as you'll be visiting areas and hearing battle music repeatedly. So, if you're going to be listening to this so much, it better be peak, which is why a lot of them have goated OSTs. But back to Dragon Quest XI's OST, if I may take issue with one song in particular, how about Endless Battle, the boss theme? The song itself feels bored and uninterested. Just listen to the opening of the song. See? It sounds like, fine, I guess we have to do the boss music. But to pick out one song that stuck out in my head while I was playing was People 1. It sounds like I could hear it as like elevator music. Just take a quick listen. So really, the soundtrack peaks when you choose your character's name. Yeah, really. There's not that much to say about the music, so with all my grievances with this game addressed, let's head to the conclusion. In conclusion, Dragon Quest XI is a deeply exhausting game with an uninspired story that throws out anything that could have been good. The combat and bosses are alright, but I just can't enjoy them because of all the grinding in the way of it. And it's all set to the video game OST of all time. However, one positive thing that I hope you can take away from this is by pointing out what I didn't like about this entry. I directed you to what I love about all the RPGs that aren't this. I overall adore this genre and its ability to tell unique and interesting stories. I love the great combat and complex strategies it makes me come up with. I appreciate how they can keep me an entertained customer for over 30 hours and have great pacing throughout, and I can't get enough of listening to their OSTs. It almost makes up the majority of the music that I listen to. However, none of this applies to the latest entry and the one that started it all. In all of this, it is not offensively bad. It's just another face in the near endless crowd. This is how Dragon Quest XI bores you to tears. Hey, that's a title of it. Alright, I hope you loved it. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button as it only takes 1 second. And hopefully, I can reach 1,000 by the end of this year. I hope you have a great day. Bye!